So again, thanks everyone. And this evening's agenda is really primarily about talking about sort of the layout structure of putting together the annual budget, as well as some items that we're considering moving forward related to issues that may be out there that are impacting the creation of the budget. And then, of course, as always, open for feedback, and we will continue to welcome feedback all throughout the process. And I have to say, it's I'm always glad to do the Zoom meeting, but folks have already taken advantage of being able to email us their thoughts, and that's great. And we take them all, we put them all together, and we bring them into the long-range planning process, and we move right from there. So tonight's agenda is talking about the cycle, the strategic plan, the outlook as it is right now, continuous improvement, and how our resources are deployed throughout the organization, guiding principles when we develop our budgetary plans, and then next steps in the process. And in our cycle of planning, really, each year we have an update that we do annually rather than sort of that 5-year cycle that you typically see related to strategic planning. We actually look at it annually and make those changes and adjustments. And the strategic plan sort of is the foundation and undergirds everything that we do in terms of our goal setting for the year. So the Board of Education and the district have district goals, and of course my goals, and the building level goals, and on throughout the district. And they can all draw right back to the strategic plan and the mission, vision, and values throughout the White Plains City School District. We have our long-range plan that will come up, and we'll begin presenting the long-range plan, I think, very shortly, just in the next couple of board meetings. Isn't that right, Ann? And right now we're in the process of refining, that plan, making changes, and we'll be bringing that forward. And folks who are interested can look at the long-range plan as it exists today. That's all available on the district's website, as always, as well. And then we'll come to the proposed budget for the community's consideration in May of 2025. So lots to contend with every year, things that we can sort of predict, and lots of things that we can't predict. All in an open system like a school district, everything sort of can have an impact and influence, and we try as best as we can to sort of predict and make considerations for all of those types of impacts. So we have the political climate, which can definitely change the way that funding appears, can change the way that policies and regulations appear, both at the federal and state level. An economy that shifts and moves, and of course, all dependent again, right, sort of an interplay there in market forces. A tax levy cap that is not really a 2% tax cap. We know that the costs, and you'll see this in a couple of slides, the costs in the market, of course, have far exceeded 2%. We're hopeful that we'll be at 2% this year, but again, it still remains to be seen. We have state and federal aid, which again can shift depending upon the political environment. We have enrollment that changes. Fortunately, we do a demographic study each year, so we have a good sense of where our enrollment is going to be. But even when we see enrollment dip, the need for services and supports in program and additional services don't necessarily change. So you might have a decrease in the number of students and all throughout the organization, but it doesn't mean necessarily that you're closing classrooms or that all of a sudden you don't need any specific service that exists in the organization. So we're fortunate here, we're pretty stable, and we have been pretty stable, and our projections for the future continue to do that. Folks ask, well, what about development, and how is that going to impact potentially into the future? We do keep an eye on the development that is both sort of on the books and planning, and that's coming online right now, and seeing how the numbers may change with those predictions. Not all that much, again, depending upon what we see annually, but we definitely are going to continue to monitor that moving into the future. Increased costs, everything costs more, we all know it. This relates to everything all throughout the school district, just like in our own homes. SED policy changes, things to keep our eye on that the state education department may or may not be putting into effect. Our aging facilities, and every year the buildings get a little bit older. We're really, really fortunate here. Great support from the community over the years, in some cases over 100 years, in maintaining and supporting buildings, and our facilities continue to be beautiful, but they also require a great deal of work to keep them that way. And they are the people's buildings, and we want to make sure that our children are learning in the best possible environments that we can provide for them. Increase in student needs, and this is something that we have seen over the last several years. We see more and more and more children coming to us and needing specific and special services. And we want to make sure that we are in a good position to be able to provide those services, provide those supports, and meet all the needs of all of our children as best as we can. You might not think about it too much, but global conflicts and even climate change can impact policy decisions in terms of state and federal. We have all different types of considerations that we have to keep sort of in mind as we plan for the future. And planning helps us to be able to navigate and weather some real challenges. And we've seen this over the years. I mean, most recently we saw with the pandemic, where the school district was able to, while not perfect, was definitely able to pivot and move and support our students and our families to move through that process as best as we could. Again, thankfully, we were in a good position to be able to do things like provide internet, to provide one-to-one services, to have the systems in place to offer, even though it was something we never want to return to, distance learning, to be able to provide and make the changes in terms of our facilities to get back into the buildings sooner than most were able to. That all came because of the planning that we had in place in terms of our overall fiscal plan and our ability to be nimble, if you will, when challenges arise. So we want to be as effective and as efficient as we possibly can be in terms of managing the resources within the school district. We want to make sure that we look for reallocation of resources to maximize student outcomes. So where can we make shifts within the existing budgetary structure to be able to support new needs versus adding and constantly trying to increase the size of the organization. We want to make sure that we stay in sound fiscal health now and into the future. And that's hard to do because there's some predictive qualities there that you have to take into account. But at the same time, one of the things that we do constantly is always audit our organization to identify efficiencies that may exist. We want to make sure that we're connecting to year budget to maintain program, to make sure that our program continues to be as strong as it possibly can be and stable for the long term. And this also does help, of course, assisting everybody in the organization in terms of long-range planning and then attention to the program as it exists today. So planning goes a long way, and that's something, of course, that we all know. Whoops, sorry. Long-range plan, Ann, you want to talk a little bit about what the plan includes?
Sure, Dr. Ricka. Good evening, everybody. Plan really includes everything that has a cost impact. So you want to make sure you're looking ahead at your instructional programs. You're looking at what are the technology needs, what are the facility needs. So everyone in the organization is engaged in this process, because it's not just about rolling the existing budget forward and putting some estimates. It's really wanting to understand what are those program needs so that you can shift and pivot if those needs become more important, and that you can make thoughtful decisions. So it's really just to really give us a good guidance into how to make long-term decisions.
And so a lot of what I was just talking about are all part of that process, thanks, Ann. And again, the strategic plan, which of course is available, we're focusing on 3 major areas: education, support, and partnership. And we continue to try to make sure that our guiding principles are part of every single subsequent budget that we put forward. So there's a lot to consider in terms of the fiscal outlook this year. As I mentioned, inflation and market costs are outpacing the amount that's allowed to be raised in the school. Remember, we are governed by the tax cap in terms of how much the budget can increase year to year to year. Some people say the 2% tax cap, and it's 2% max, really, when you're thinking about just the straight tax cap. And CPI is projected to be at 2.93% for 2024, Ann, right? So that is a major issue. That's a major issue. It's a major impact on our ability to raise additional funds in the subsequent years. We also, again, we have property assessments in the community that are not increasing. Do you want to just make a quick mention about that, Ann?
Sure. We all know there's lots of building going on in the city. However, most times with commercial property, there are pilot agreements that are being put into place by Westchester County and the city of White Plains. That's payment in lieu of taxes. And so those assessments associated with those pilot agreements do not add to the calculation of the tax levy cap. You know, we still get our money for our taxes, it's just that that helps provide the monies necessary to fund the reoccurring costs of the operations of the district. And while a pilot agreement is in place, the physical quantity of those assessments just are not added to the rolls.
Thanks, Ann. And stating again, we worked a long time, and huge credit to the Board of Education, PTA, all of our advocates who worked hard, not just for the children of the city of White Plains, but also for the children all throughout the state of New York, to make sure that Foundation Aid state aid was fully funded. Well, we achieved that, and so now the concern is, well, what now? What next? And there is a commission that's happening right now, many of you probably know, where the legislature and the governor have commissioned the Blue Ribbon Panel to study Foundation Aid, the way the formula is presently constructed, and make recommendations into the future. What does that mean for White Plains right now? Not much. What it means right now is we need to be conservative in terms of what we're projecting. The state budget gap is probably going to be around $2.3 billion. Is that still accurate, Ann?
That was current information as of May of '24.
Right,
We'll probably update for the next quarter.
And it's going to be unlikely, you know, that we're going to necessarily see additional aid, or at least significant additional aid in the budget. In fact, we're hearing quite the opposite right now. The New York State Education Department is collecting information from all the school districts throughout the state of New York, so-called talk of regionalization. And this is not the combination of school districts. Regionalization is seeing if there's efforts that can be shared in terms of services, classes, opportunities, district to district to district throughout the state of New York. We have a lot of concerns with that, a lot of concern with what that would look like, but we also know that that's likely a step in the process to try to mitigate a change to the hold harmless or save harmless school districts. We are not one of those school districts, but there are a lot of concerns in terms of how will state support continue. How do we get more of White Plains dollars back to White Plains? How do we make sure that we're using current data for student needs, socioeconomic projections, property costs, all of these things, cost of living regionally? How do we make sure we're having the best possible set of data when there is a change to the Foundation Aid formula? All this is happening right now. We also know that costs, contractual costs, they outpace the tax levy cap. We know that. We take that into consideration as best as we can. We've made a lot of inroads in terms of trying to make sure that all of our collective bargaining agreements are sustainable into the future. Contribution to health care, you name it, we've been looking, and big credit to our colleagues in the collective bargaining units who have worked very, very closely with us to ensure that all successor agreements are sustainable, that they're fair, but they're also contracts that can move us into the future considering the constraints of the tax cap. Nobody ever wants to see the school district losing program. That is something that we will make sure is the very last thing that we look at, because that is the most important thing that we do for our children, and making sure that they have a solid educational program all throughout the school district, all throughout the years, kindergarten through graduation of high school. Enrollment, again, as I mentioned, slight increase this year, relatively flat. We do have some shortfalls that we need to contend with moving into this next fiscal plan. And we're looking at multiple ways to be able to close budget gaps, and that's again digging into our existing resources. How can we change? How can we shift? How can we redeploy them within the organization to make those to bridge those gaps? What can potentially be strategically abandoned in terms of we have it covered in another way, if you will. We're always looking for those types of efficiencies. We also are, again, continuous improvement. What's working, what needs modifications, what do we need to change moving forward? And this goes from everything. This could be, the paper the type of paper that we buy, the amount of ink that we buy for printers. It can be anything, you name it. we're always looking for ways to be able to save resources and save costs if we can, without negatively impacting the children's academic program. So we want to look always at academic achievement, what's working, what classes are being taken, extracurricular participation. By the way, extracurricular participation is tremendous. Our students are participating everything from athletics and the arts, and very, very well attended. We also want to make sure that staffing and the services are where they need to be. And then, again, thinking about the future, what we're doing right now. And this is yours.
Well, I always feel that our guiding principles and what we go by here at the district is to make sure that we're always protecting the instructional core. You know, and we look, as Dr. Ricka said, looking for other ways to be able to make efficiencies and streamline things in order to take care of that. So we're protecting the instructional core, evaluating wants versus needs. You know, that's a process we go through with administration. We're always looking to preserve our investments in our buildings and the assets of the district. Looking to find efficiencies, looking to share services. We, you know, work closely with BOCES and other districts. And then delay program impact. You know, if we have to make modifications or phase things in, then we look to do that.
So key dates coming up tonight. Community input forum for the input process is underway, and again, you know, feel free. I know we have a light crowd tonight. I understand it's a Monday night. I know there's a somewhat important baseball game coming up, I've heard, and this will be available, and this opportunity will be available to the entire community. We will definitely continue to send out the email address and the links, and again, make some time right now at the end. Coming up in January, we have strategic long-range plan to the Finance Committee at 13th. It's going to be here before you know it. The strategic long-range plan to the Board of Education. February 10th, instructional budget. February 24th, non-instructional budget. March 3rd, the preliminary budget goes to the Finance Committee. And March 10th, the preliminary budget to the Board of Education. Seems like a long time between now and then, but it comes very, very fast. And there's a lot that goes into it. So we really do appreciate everybody taking the time to connect with us this evening, to send feedback through or share this evening. Thank you. And does anybody have any questions, or would you like to offer any recommendations for consideration right now?
Dr. Ricka?
Hi.
Hi, how are you? It's Leslie.
Good. Hi.
Just a quick thing. There's been a couple things that have come up at various meetings and stuff about some things that like the governor's put forward that, you know, could be mandates, but she's not really going to pay for. That, like, I think the electric busing thing, like maybe just, like what, are there any really big things out there that you're concerned about that we need to think about?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, I'm concerned about several items. I'm concerned about the mandate for electric vehicles, regardless of how I may feel about sustainability or the effectiveness of electric vehicles. And we have 5 of them. We were the first and I think we were the first in the state to have electric school buses. There's a major concern with having a mandate in place, because then that's going to create an artificial environment where the manufacturers are not going to reduce their prices. And so, you know, that's my first concern. I have a number. The infrastructure is not prepared. We don't have the ability to actually manufacture the vehicles and get them onto the road in terms of conversations with the actual vehicle producers. We have infrastructure concerns related to charging stations and road work, bridges, you name it. There's a lot of concerns related to mandating that every single vehicle, you know, that school districts are running by a particular date are electrified. I think we will continue to see the electrification of school vehicles. I think we'll see hybrid utilized as well. But in terms of that mandate, that's one that we do have a lot of concerns with. I have some other concerns. I have concerns with the regulation that was initially put forward and now has been tabled, which we may have talked about for mixed athletics. I have concerns with the regionalization in terms of how that would look for, let's say, students from another school district attending classes in the White Plains City School District because we offered them and they couldn't. There are a lot of concerns that I have, and we've been advocating, very strongly against, quite frankly, because they are mandates that don't come with funds. We have a ton of unfunded mandates as it is, and given the environment, we want to be very smart about what should be a priority, and we definitely think the priority right in the focus right here should be in White Plains, and it should be on what's best for White Plains. Did I answer?
Yeah, no, I know a lot of these things are gonna, could have big impacts that we don't even, like you were saying, like, infrastructure and all that stuff. So, yeah, just wanted to see if there was anything else, and you had mentioned the regionalization. So, yeah, that's great, thank you.
Yeah, you bet, thanks. Any other questions, feedback? Well, I have to tell you, again, thank you so much. It was probably 8 or 9 years ago we started doing these meetings, and they're usually short, and it really is a kickoff to the feedback process. We got a lot already. We've had folks send in recommendations for changes to the athletic facilities, improvements and enhancements. We've got recommendations related to transportation. We've got recommendations related to curriculum offerings. We've got recommendations related to the types of food that's offered. So, the community definitely sends in, and please continue to do that. We do take all of this feedback and we do process it and see where and if it can fit into our planning. Frankly, a number of improvements over the years came out of meetings just like this. Some of you will remember where our kids at the high school used to have to pay cash to ride school buses. One of the things that came out of these types of meetings is how do we change that? Air conditioning in our facilities, that was a conversation that was always had at these meetings. So, these are the types of examples, and thanks for the feedback, and thanks for taking the time this evening.
I'm sorry, just really quickly, is there any place where those recommendations are published so people can see what the input that people have given so far?
No, I never published. I've never published actually the emails that folks have sent. I have them, but I don't know. We probably could look at it, but I've not done it yet.
Okay, just curious, because sometimes you see something and you're like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Maybe you can give more input or something like that. So I was just curious to see if those topics were available anywhere.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, thanks, everybody. It was less than a half hour. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, have a great evening.